Everyone, this is Xander, and this is Before the Journey, My Early Childhood, Part 2. Before I continue, I would like to do a recap of Part 1, considering it's been a month. Now, as you remember, I mentioned my toddler years. I mentioned a couple family members. I mentioned what life was like living with my biological father's side of the family. But I was very brief, and it was from the years 86 to 93. I also briefly mentioned a little bit about my mom and when she got me back. But where I would like to start is in the year of 1993. Right after my mom took me to Toys R Us to spoil me a little bit. Right after that. Alright. So, after getting spoiled a bit at Toys R Us, we went to go visit the family. And the first place we went to was going to meet some other family members I haven't seen in a while or I haven't met yet. I met my younger brother, who at the time was 2 going on 3. And at this time, I thought I was an only child. I guess that wasn't the case. You can imagine for a 6-year-old boy going on 7, this was pretty new to me. Now I'm a big brother, I have to be an example to him. Evidently, I truthfully did not know what I was doing when it came to that task. And you'll see why. I mean, sometimes I was a good example growing up, other times I was not. And I'll get into that later. So, now we're staying from place to place, maybe a couple places, a hotel, another place. I remember meeting my aunt, my mother's sister. We were playing the original Nintendo that came out in the 80s, and we were just hanging out. I remember the original Nintendo. Oh boy, Super Mario Brothers, that little bird game with the first person shooter gun you used to shoot birds with. It was awesome. And I remember getting introduced to the bunk beds where my brother and I would sleep. And my brother would be on the bottom bunk and I would be on the top bunk. A lot of memories on those bunk beds. A lot of memories. Some of them would later help me out in adulthood later in life. So we probably stayed in a couple of places before we ended up moving on the base up in MacDill in Tampa, Florida. And I remember that clear as day, going to MacDill and how much fun we were going to have. My brother and I shared a room. My aunt had her own room. My adoptive dad and my mother shared a room. We all each had a room. I remember going across the street real close to where we lived. There was a playground for kids. So going to that playground was like going in our own backyard. You have the swings, you have the slides, you have everything a little kid can enjoy. And I also found out when I first started living with them at that time that the man who was my stepdad would become my adoptive father was going to adopt me. I was going to another school at the time But I think what happened is I ended up, you know, probably getting adopted before we moved to the base. I don't exactly recall, but I do recall I got adopted by him during that time frame. And I do remember being excited, my name was getting changed. It wasn't going to be my biological father's last name, it was going to be his last name with a new middle name. And it was going to be fun for me. I ended up enjoying life on the base, but there's more to the base than meets the eye. And I can tell you that now. When we first moved into the base, it was basically get me into school, and it was also getting into Little League. Little League for me was fun, but we had to do loads and loads of practice. If I had continued doing baseball back then, I'd probably be good at it now. Surprisingly, I still remember maybe few of the rules. But it was fun for me because, in a way, I made friends. During the weekends, I'd go to a daycare. I'd see my friends there. My brother was in daycare. I was in school, going to a grade school at the time. And exactly, I think I was maybe, don't think it was kindergarten. I think I was in kindergarten before I moved in the base. I'm not sure. Maybe at the end. But I do remember I was probably in first grade at the time. Probably so, first grade, because I was 6 going on 7. And when we moved into the base, I was probably in first grade. So I went to a school, very nice school, went to Little League on the weekends, played my heart out. Sometimes I'd keep my eye on the ball, other times I'd get my adoptive dad so mad, he'd have a few unpleasant things to say. I remember, he would lose his cool at times, but, he had his reasons, I guess. But the one thing I wish him and my mother would have never done was cuss like sailors. Like, seriously. It wasn't nice. I love and miss my mother, but one thing I didn't like is when she got mad, she would cuss. And she would yell. And I love her to this day, but maybe she had a little more patience with me when I was a kid, when I was probably little, but she had a mouth on her. But she had probably more patience than my adoptive dad did. No offense to my adoptive dad. Yep. So life on the base was pretty fun. Or so I thought. I went to go see Aladdin in theaters when I first started living with them. That was quite an experience. And I'm talking about the original Aladdin. One came out in, I think, 92. It was still in theaters by early 93, so my mom was able to get me to the theaters to see the movie. So that was pretty cool. We went and saw a Disney movie in theaters, and she actually bought it for us later down the line. So, back to living on the base. See if I can backtrack my memory just a little bit. I do recall one of the places we went to go out to eat. And before going out to eat, I do recall they had wanted me to eat home cooked meals. When I first started living with them, I was stuck on eating Happy Meals, according to my mother. and that's all I would eat. First couple times I pushed the plate away because I wanted a cheeseburger and fries. That's where my mind was at. Cheeseburger and fries. So I went without for a couple nights. Then one night I got tired of it. I eventually got hungry. And I loved it. I ate it all. It was good. So they finally got me into home cooked meals. It took some time, but they got me into home cooked meals. And I'll tell you, it was hard, you know, at first, but I eventually got hungry and decided to do it. So I did, and to this day I eat home cooked meals because of that. And I do recall one of the things that was told to me that, you know, I was probably, it was probably like early 93 all this took place. And I'm sorry I'm a little out of sorts. I'm trying to organize my memories here. But yeah, that's what happened when I first moved in. It was the home cooked meals. It was the, you know, the Little League and getting into school plus getting adopted. Once all that was done, keep in mind that I was basically, you know, whew, let me think here. Just keep in mind I was basically just living the life as a kid. Regular everyday kid. My mom bought my brother and I movies from Blockbuster. She rented movies for us. There was movies we could watch, movies we couldn't watch. My adopted dad did not let us watch Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, when it first came out. And I do recall that we had probably, excuse me for too many errors here, we probably had like Dennis the Menace. We ended up getting that. We ended up getting Batman Mask of the Phantasm. And we ended up getting the Disney Aladdin animated version. My mom got me into movie collecting, which would later become a habit when I got older. But we got into collecting VHS movies, like a bunch of Disney movies. I remember going to school, we had like, I borrowed Sleeping Beauty, we watched it. And yeah, the year of 93 was pretty fun, but there's more to the story. And I do recall a lot of what went down, was good and then was also bad being in that home. And I also remember I haven't quite learned to tie my shoe yet, or shoes at the time. And my adoptive dad, being militant like he was going to teach me, but in a certain way, which would happen later. So, that's all I can say right at the moment. This is like the introduction of living out on the base. There'll be more to come, and like I said, I apologize if I'm a little out of sorts telling this story. I wanted to be prepared, and I was prepared to tell you, but at the same time, I think the next part will kind of go into a little more detail. We haven't reached a lot of the mature content yet of what I remember, but we'll get there, okay? Y'all take care. God bless you. Bye-bye.